Welcome back to another special edition of Rock Forever. We've got a very special guest all the way over in Australia in his car and ready to talk music to you. Of course, he is the main composer, songwriter, keyboardist, background vocalist, and all around extraordinary talent of the multi platinum award winning group INXS, and now a great solo artist. Please welcome Andrew Farriss.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. I know you're halfway around the world there, but music brings us all together. It's so universal. And I know you have a streaming show coming up. We can't wait for everybody to get on board. But take us back if you could. I know the Farriss brothers in '77, of course, put together the group INXS in Sydney. But tell us, when you started playing instruments and if there were any like special inspirations or artists that really influenced you to do it.
Sure. Well, I learned to play piano when I was 9 years of age, and my elder brother Tim, he learned to play guitar, classical guitar, and my younger brother learned to play drums. But during those years, before that even, my dad was in the Royal Navy at the end of World War II on aircraft carriers, and when he got out of the Navy, it was a long story. He actually worked as a journalist for one of the London papers. And then he got with some other guys. They came out to Australia from London and they set up an insurance company. And he hadn't been back to see his parents or my grandparents for 15 years. So in 1964, he put both my brothers and myself, our younger sister wasn't born yet. So we went by ship from Perth in Western Australia to London in 1964. And then we went to this variety show and outwalked the Beatles. That was the first band I ever saw. And I thought, dude, that's pretty cool. And then I think that had a big effect on me and my brothers. But even then, when we got back to Perth in Western Australia, and even before I learned to play the piano, I used to go to sleep with a transistor radio underneath the pillow. And in those years in Perth, it was a very remote city. It still is the most geographically remote city in the world, I think. They used to play all kinds of music, all genres of music on the radio. They'd have like anything and everything you could think of. They'd play country music, and then they'd play classical music, so a little bit of jazz, some pop music, some early rock and roll. All this kind of stuff was all on the same radio station. So as a little kid, I thought, if as I get into music, that all music's on all radio stations all the time. It wasn't until I got older and we started traveling more, especially overseas, to the US outside of Australia and places where have the much more segregated radio genres.
Yeah, I remember. I actually moved to England myself in '64. I spent 3 years there starting school. I'm just a year younger than you, but yeah, the British invasion was everywhere. Of course, they had Top of the Pops on television and all
Right.
these great shows, and the music was so vibrant. But the BBC was kind of like that, where they had to play all styles of music because there was only one big broadcasting channel back then in England. That's when they started, people started pirate radio out in the English Channel and out in the ocean. But yeah, exciting time. So you got a diverse background, a little soul music, a little country, a little jazz, a little pop, and all that. Now, obviously, I know you founded the band, of course, with your brothers and Gary Beers and Kurt, and Michael Hutchins was the core group, and of course we didn't get you till Shabu Shaba, in '83. I know you had 2 records before that, but talk about as the band gelled and you felt like your sound was really coming together, and you felt you were learning from the recording process to really able, because obviously that album had The One Thing and Don't Change, which became big on MTV. So talk about you feeling the band developing and being kind of having a chance to get ready for the world stage.
Yeah, that was really interesting, the way that our band came together originally, it was actually called the Farris Brothers, and we changed it to INXS later on because we thought it was a cool name and the spelling and all that. But I think the other thing was that a lot of people may not understand is that Michael Hutchence had he'd originally gone to school in Hong Kong, and that's how we met as kids when he came to Sydney in Australia. He looked like he was in shock when he walked into the high school. And I had some friends, and I was pretty good at sport when I was younger, and I wasn't easily intimidated all the time by other people. And so I kind of managed to somehow pull him out of like a schoolyard a fight thing. It was just a silly little thing. But anyway, and then that's how we became friends. We actually didn't talk about music. He was into motorbikes and stuff. We just became friends. And then I had my little sort of teenage bands, and I was actually a singer, and I still wrote music back then. And Michael, he'd written poetry. Well, we met each other, and then he went off to the United States. He actually went to North Hollywood High School. He went with his mother because his parents had split up. And when he came back, he had long hair, and he was like really into stuff, like teenage stuff you had back then. It was girls, weed, cars, whatever it was. And so we had something in common. And but he said, you're still into your music. And I said, yeah, damn right, I'm into my music. And so he used to come along and listen to the bands or whatever that we had as kids. And I suggested to him one day, why don't you try singing these words you're writing? Because he was really good at lyrics and prose and all that kind of thing, or poetry, he called it. And he always was great at that. But how the band formed, yeah. But later on, with what I'm doing now as Andrew Farriss, I didn't start off going, hey, I'll just have a country music career. I've always loved country music, and I like the folk music and blues music, and I like the combination of these things with rock music too. There's a lot of cross pollination that goes on between these genres of music. I think sometimes the lines are a little blurred between the genres.
Yeah, well, especially now, with the internet, it's more and more people are hearing music as opposed to kind of be force fed through radio. And, there's less rules, and there's a really blurring in a lot of areas in entertainment now. Content is kind of accepted on all levels. Interesting fact, North Hollywood High School is right up the street from where I'm talking to you. So little did I know, yeah, Michael went to school like less than a mile from here.
That's pretty strange if you stop and think about it for a minute.
I'd never heard that.
Wait a minute. Or you could look at it a different way. And it's something I'm beginning to believe a lot in, and is that when things start to become, everything's in a flow and things are happening and the doors keep opening and things are lining up all the time, the stars are lining up all the time in your life, I think it means it's because you're where you're supposed to be at that time in your life, and you're on the right path, at that point in your life. Because I feel like that's happening to me right now. The fact that you just told me that is very strange, but I believe everything that is happening to me right now, I know this sounds a bit wacky, is supposed to be happening. I don't know why, I've gone and made this record. And it kind of happened by accident in one sense, where I didn't start off saying, immediately, well, I'm going to make an album and it's focused on the Wild West of Americana or Australiana or Canadiana, whatever you want to call it. I didn't start off like that. Where it started off was I was re-recording songs that I'd written many years ago and some that I'd written very recently, but I wasn't happy with the recordings. I thought the recordings were really, some of them were dreadful and poor quality, and I just didn't feel that comfortable with the sound of the recordings. And there was different vocalists singing them, and depending if I'd co-written songs with other singers or whatever. And so as I started to re-record these songs, I began to sing them because I was the closest singer, including my farm. I don't live on the coast in Australia, in our beautiful cities or on the coastline, on suburbs and all that. I live a long way inland. I guess you guys would call it the outback. And I'm very comfortable living out where everyone dresses like a cowboy. That doesn't worry me at all. And you know, so my journey started where I I started re-recording my demos, and then uh, along the way, my wife Marlena, she's from Dayton in Ohio, and that's about 5.5 hours drive down Highway 75 to Nashville. And so I'm in Nashville, I'm re-recording my songs or whatever, I'm singing them, and the mix engineer at the time, I said to him, well, I'll get someone who really knows what they're doing later on to sing this stuff, you know. And he goes, well, what's wrong with your voice? And I said, well, that's just me, you know. He goes, well, keep singing, we like it. And I'm like, really? I was like, yeah. Well, so okay. So I kept singing, and well, Marlena, my wife, was with me in Nashville on one of these trips. And we said, let's go, let's get out of here. Let's have a break. I've been working, I've been writing, recording, whatever. Let's go down and take a holiday. So we went down to the Mexican border, right along where the Chiricahua Mountains is, where New Mexico and Arizona meet Mexico. And it's a beautiful, beautiful wilderness area. And you got to think Apache Indians, the U.S. cavalry, the Mexican people across the border, the Mexican army, the tombstones just up the road from here with the cowboys, and outlaws. You know, the outlaws were everywhere running around. Then you had the settlers trying to make a life for themselves in this wilderness area, and chaos going on everywhere. And we rode horses. I thought it was going to be like a pony ride thing. Well, that's not what we got. We rode horses for 6 hours a day, 6 days in a row. And we had a little break for lunch each day in these beautiful wilderness area. Well, I know where Geronimo surrendered. We rode to the top of Cochise, the stronghold, and I could see how the U.S. cavalry would have come towards him and how he could escape. There was only the four of us. There was my wife, Marlena, and myself, an old Wrangler cowboy guy called Craig Lawson, and his wife, Tam. And we basically, you know, he gave me an education in this area I would never have imagined. I didn't see all this coming. And as a songwriter, I began to absorb what was actually happening around me and thinking about the tumultuous history of this area. And it affected me. It affected me emotionally. I didn't see this coming. And it was so long, you know, no longer was it a Hollywood movie. This wasn't some fantasy experience. It was gritty and dry and dusty. And I went back again. I just didn't do this once. I went back 3 or 4 times to make sure what I saw the first time was real. And then I saw all these desolate areas where you still have stagecoach routes where you could see the wheels of the stagecoach would have been, and people hadn't driven like 4-wheel drive off-road vehicles along them. There's nothing there. It's wilderness. It's just abandoned silver mines or whatever, and Highway 80. And I thought, well, I went back to Nashville, and because of my experience with INXS, and you were asking about INXS, and I appreciate that, because of I used to have to songwrite under enormous pressure to keep coming up with chart hits all the time. I recognize and I understand the pressure that gets on people when they build a career, especially internationally, and you have labels or record labels or even just culture or media want to hear, what's your next thing you've got? Come on, come on, come on. When I went back to Nashville, I recognized that it doesn't matter what genre of music you're in. It can be country music, can be Americana, it can be rock, it can be EDM, hip hop, doesn't matter what, jazz, doesn't matter. You know, everybody wants to be successful in the charts, and you know, everybody wants that. And so when I got back there, I felt a little uncomfortable because when I started writing with people, they're like, what do you want to write a song about? And I was like, well, I'd like to write about the Old West. And they're like, what? And like that's kind of in background, you know, like that's not happening anymore, man. You know, like it's kind of like that's been done. And I'm like, well, that's not really the way I see it. I see the meeting of culture in the world, the meeting of cultures, you know, European culture meeting with these indigenous cultures, and in countries like Australia, United States, Canada. These are big experiences. These are important things that are happening. And the formation of folk music into country music and how it came about to where we are today in the 21st century. You know, we're talking to each other through technology, you and me right now. The frontier world of physical boundaries and cultures clashing and meeting and all of that and I'm not talking about war. I'm just talking about cultures meeting each other. You know, technology is the new frontier. IT and technology and electricity and science and all these fields of endeavor are like the frontiers of things. And then I realized how I could make my album gets released on March 19th is I wanted to make my album about frontiers, about the real sense of freedom, not a cliche, but that, you know, where is our freedom? Is it technical freedom? Is that what it is?
Yeah, no, it never ends. You know, we're always looking to embark on new frontiers, just as they did in the, you know, the old days. I mean, you look at America. We only celebrated our 200th anniversary in 1976. You know,
Right,
and
right.
and you'll never believe the connection again, because I went to high school at that time in Dayton, Ohio. I went to Oakwood High School, so you have to tell your
Whoa.
wife. Oakwood.
What? You're making that up, right?
No, it's for real. I moved to
Oh man,
Panama.
now you're being weird.
I
Okay,
know.
that's weird.
I know. We got a lot of connections here. North Hollywood
Oh,
High and Dayton,
yeah.
Ohio. I went to my first arena concert in Dayton, Ohio. I saw Elton John on the Yellow Brick Road show and completely blew my mind.
I
I mean,
bet.
the
I,
costumes, the glasses. I mean,
wow.
an arena full of people smoking weed and frisbees and beach balls and girls in halter tops. I mean, I was done after that.
Yeah. Well, well, when Marlena comes back from the gym, I'm going to tell her. So, what was the venue again that you went to? Do you remember?
It's the basketball arena for the University of Dayton.
Right.
I used to live right down by the college, and my high school is called Oakwood, and
Oakwood. Yeah.
it's a suburb of Dayton.
That's a very nice suburb,
It
Oakwood.
is. It
I
is.
know where that is. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that's
Kettering and Oakwood. They're it's a nice area. It's amazing. Your wife's
yeah,
from
no,
there. I don't know if you know the history, but there's a lot of major funk bands
right.
from
Yeah,
Dayton,
I do.
Ohio Players and
I know. I
Roger
know
and
this.
Zapp.
Right. Yeah, I know this. And actually because my wife Marlena, she's a stage 4 metastatic breast cancer survivor, and so we played a charity function at the Dublin pub. You know where that is in the Oregon district? You know what
Oh
I'm
yeah,
talking about?
sure.
Yeah. Well, we I did a show there, you know, and Jeff Stevens, the local DJ for the radio station there, he you know, helped us promote it or whatever. And but that was cool, and you know, I love doing that gig. That gig was fun. Yeah, I did it with another local band. That was cool. But I can't believe what we're talking about here. You know, I have family that live in Kettering. Man, that is really
Oh wow.
strange.
That is amazing. Yeah, no, it was it was fun times, you know. But
Yeah,
I eventually moved to California in 1980, and I you know, obviously radio stations like K Rock out here and
right.
MTV was getting going, and you guys just had the formula, you know. I mean, that run between Listen Like Thieves and Kick and the X album. I mean, talk about songwriting. I mean, you were on fire, and I know you felt the pressure, but you know, where did that funk influence? Because obviously I know Tim on the guitar, but
Yeah.
you know, there was a funk dance,
Wow.
you know, influence to the band.
Okay. Well, you got to understand this. You know, let's go back in time a little bit. When the Farris brothers, which became INXS, same guys but just different band name, when when we formed on August 16th, 1977, which is the same day Elvis died. Don't ask me what that's about. Anyway, so and then we played this party, and it was the first time we played together. And you know, well, back in those days, you know, people were taking all kinds of, well, they still do, but all kinds of drugs, you know, including like sleepers, you know, and my mom and dad came down to see the band, and the next day we saw mom and dad, and dad said, "Hey man, you know," well, no, he didn't say, "Hey man," he said, "Hey son," he said, your band's good, but you got to pick up the numbers. Everyone keeps falling asleep, you know." But it wasn't so much that, it was more that what we're talking about here is the funk part of it. I think the first song that we ever played as INXS or the Farris brothers was actually "I Shot the Sheriff." It was actually kind of reggae song, but it had like funk influence, and we always loved funk stuff. I mean, we were covering songs back then like Hot Stuff by the Rolling Stones and other things that we knew were influenced with all that funk stuff. And uh but by the time, and I hope everyone's following this or cares, but by the end of the 70s, it had gone from funk and disco and all that into punk music, and all of that stuff was just straight eights and sixteenths, da 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 da, And so we started, well, we've got to get with the program or we're not going to eat, so we started playing music that was more just rock, like eighths and sixteenths, and we just pushed the funk side aside for a little while. Well, around about 1983 and 80, around about 83, the first two tours we did in the US, um, Nile Rodgers came back to see us in Canada, in Vancouver, I think it was, an outdoor gig. And he said, "Hey, I've been watching your band and listening to your music on MTV." And we said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I've just been out in New York and I wanted to come talk to you guys." And we're like, "Wow, it's Nile Rodgers. He's in the room." And Nile starts talking to us and he's saying, "I want to track some stuff with you." And we're like, "Is this really happening?" We're like, "Sure." So he said, "Write me a great song and we'll track it." So Mark and I looked at each other and said, "Well, okay." So we wrote this song called Original Sin, about kids of different, race, color, creed, background, religion, whatever, playing in a schoolyard, and the kids get on fine, and so Michael, he had this lyric idea and it was brilliant. And I already had the music, believe it or not. I had these funk riffs and I even had the arrangement of what I wanted to do. And so we worked on this track and Niall liked the track. And when we got to the power station in New York City, to actually record this song, and he starts tracking the guitar part with my brother Tim. They're both playing it at the same time on the record, and he turns around to me because he knew I'd written the music, and he said, "Can you write me a chord chart?" I'm shitting myself. I'm 23 years of age. I'm in New York City. I like, what am I doing? So and I didn't know how to write chord charts. So I wrote this thing out for Niall, and he's somehow managed to follow what I wrote. And but the rest, as they say, is history. But funk has always been something that we love playing as a group, and I still love funk music. I love it, including areas that it's gone off into, like hip hop and EDM and all kinds of things. I love all this music, anything that makes you dance can't be bad for you, right.
And that was your first #1 in Australia. So obviously you hit a chord.
Yeah, man. Well, the thing is, I'm going to come back to my album because I feel like, I've done a lot of my life promoting INXS, love INXS. I love the band, love the songs, the whole thing. But I was going to say about what I'm doing. So I've got my solo album, self-titled, called Andrew Farriss, come out. I got a single coming out at the moment called Run Baby Run. Out right now. It's out in Australia and it's running all over the place. That's cool. And it's coming out the rest of the world as well because everything's digital now. But the thing is, I'm happy with my album at the moment. I'm getting a lot of interest. We're talking to each other. I'm getting a lot of interest in what I'm doing, and I'm kind of excited about it in a way. And I'm also heading back out on tour. I'm in Australia. I'm going to be on tour April and May, and in Australia as restrictions and lockdowns are easing or whatever. And that's been spooky the last year. And so during that time, I also released an EP of 5 tracks. And the reason I did that was because I was going to release my album, but the pandemic, kicked in around the world, and people, rightly so, were worried about their health and their families and safety and their jobs. They're worried about their incomes. And, I respect that. I completely understand that. I acknowledge that. It makes sense to me. And so I released an EP of other songs that I had luckily recorded and was happy with the songs that I just didn't think they suited my album. Well, all that's come out. And if people want to check out my YouTube channel or andrewfarriss.com, they can see that that I've actually got a live show that I recorded in a recording studio during lockdown. There's no audience, which sounds kind of weird, but That's because of restrictions of COVID. But I recorded a whole lot of tracks of the EP and the LP. But the EP section of that concert is on. You can see it if you go to the link, and the LP side of it is in post production with the filming side because it was filmed as well. And then those guys are doing that now.
Now, when you tour, what format is a solo tour? You're going to have accompaniment. What's the format of your performance going to be?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm doing I've got a great band of musicians I'm playing with. Most of them are country musicians, their backgrounds, and you know, they're local players here in Australia. But I tracked a lot of my album with Nashville, you know, session musicians over there. There's some awesome people there that I recorded with as well, and I thank them if they're ever watching what I'm saying. All those guys and girls that played on my record, boy, I was really lucky to have those people in the room. But yeah, I'll be touring with me, obviously singing up front, you know, and I've got a great band, and I'm just really excited to get out and play. And I might play some INXS songs when I get out too, because I wrote most of them, you know, co-wrote them, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we always love to hear, a new rendition of a song that we know that's reinterpreted, as the
Sure.
as the writer. Now, as you embarked on this music solo wise, did you think about what format to pursue, or did this just come natural because this is kind of where you started, with music?
Right. Yeah, I always loved country music, and I knew that I wanted to work with country artists yeah, musicians. I knew I wanted to track with country musicians. But the Wild West part of it that came along, like I was telling you earlier, that was just an accident. That was, or fate. You can call it fate. Okay. The stars were lining up because I didn't go down to the Mexican border on some, you know, cultural learning experience. I went down to ride horses for fun, you know, but then that part of it joined in with what I was doing with the country music part of it. And then I realized I knew how to make my album. It became really clear to me, you know.
Yeah, there's such an amazing history. Like I say, the America only have celebrated our 200th anniversary in 1976, especially out west. I feel in the west here, Colorado and New Mexico and Arizona and Wyoming and Montana and Idaho and Washington and Oregon, it still seems like it's the wild, wild west. We're still settling. Sure, some big cities have formed and technology has come through, but I still feel we're so new, and you can really feel the history, in the western parts of the
Mm.
states.
Yeah, same in Australia, and I think the same in Canada too. You know, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, you know, in Australia and US and Canada, there's still large tracts of land that, you know, you wonder if anyone's ever walked on them before. You know, they're wilderness areas, and to me, you know, I don't like I think I said to you, I don't live on the coast in Australia. I don't live in the suburbs. I live inland on a working farm that I've owned for many years now, and you know, it's a real farm. It's not a hobby thing. And you know, I one thing I'll tell you is you can't eat an iPhone.
That is for sure,
Right.
but
Yeah.
what grows in the ground and grows on trees, you can sustain yourself, and you
Well,
know
everything comes from the ground and goes back to the ground. I'll leave you with that one to think about. And my good friend, the old cowboy Craig Lawson used to say, keep your eyes fixed where the trail meets the sky.
good good to know. Now, Andrew, remind us again about the streaming concerts and where people can follow you and where we can, of course, be looking for this new album.
Okay. Well, my record label is BMG or BBR out of Nashville. And so that's a record company. And then if people want to follow me, they can follow me on my social media on andrewfarriss.com or on my YouTube channel. You got to check out the video that I've made for Run Baby Run. Okay, I shot it on a steam train with carriages and all that. It's like set in the Wild West sort of era, and it's this crazy video about this big, crazy lunatic guy that's chasing this girl that he wanted to tie up to the railway tracks through a train. Anyway, I'm having some fun with what I'm doing, and I hope I entertain people as I go along. You know, I take some things seriously, and some things I just want to have a good time and enjoy myself. I think that's normal. So yeah.
Yeah, it's the new chapter in your life. You deserve to bring the music that's in your heart to people. And you know, I know BMG is a great company. We've got lots of associates over there, and you know, people need to check out your website. I know it's links. I love the Run Baby Run video. I mean, I was born in Montana and raised, spent most of my years out here in the West, but it's just, you know, a great feeling to know that the West was the last part of America that was settled. And right up the street from us here is actually where the general of the settlers signed the treaty with the general of Mexico and actually created the California border, Arizona, New Mexico, all the way to
Right,
Texas. And
right.
that's where Mexico began. And it's just exciting to know that, you know, on this land, even before we got here, there was a lot of, you know, Native Americans and a lot of
Yeah,
Mexicans, you know, here. And
yeah.
we need to respect those. And I see that in your video and in your music. You have a lot of respect for this, the heritage of this music, and it really comes
Hmm.
from the heart. You know, it's not a you know, there's nothing contrived. It's very authentic.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really appreciate that. You know, Marlena, my wife, she used to say, "Why are you so anxious about everything?" I say, "Because I don't tread lightly on culture. You know, like I take culture very seriously. You know, and when you go talking about culture or singing about it or living it or whatever you're doing, you know, you tread lightly with other cultures. You need to respect other cultures because that's all we have. You know, we only have one earth and we share it with other people. And that's just the way it is. You know, it's that and the indigenous cultures knew this. They, even though in our modern, you know, societies and our modern maps of the world, there are boundaries and borders and you know, with guns lined up, and there's people, you know, telling you can't go here and you can't do this and you can't do that. I think in the old indigenous cultures, the lines were a little bit more blurry because people were a little bit more aware that, you know, sometimes, you know, by accepting another culture and by absorbing another culture and by them absorbing your culture, it made the world easier to get on with everybody. And I think trade in the old world, in the ancient world, was a great source of peace for the world because they were able to have common things they all wanted in life, and it became more important to trade with each other than to fight each other.
Yeah, great stories. You know, we can't wait. The self-titled album, Andrew Farriss, coming soon. Of course, the EP, Love Makes the World, and Run Baby Run, the single. Check out the video on his YouTube channel, and that's Andrew Farriss, FARRISS. Thank you so much for joining us. So much history going back with you, you know, into
Thank you.
the 80s, and
Yeah,
just seeing you still vibrant and alive and making this new music is super exciting. And you know, you're doing it independently through a great company, and you know, you're calling your own shots and control your own destiny, and it's great to see.
I really appreciate that. And Marlena's just come out of the gym. I'm going to tell her that story about the basketball stadium over there in Oakwood, and you seeing Elton
Yeah,
John.
it
And
was the basketball arena where University
right,
of Dayton played.
right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I'm going to
and that
tell her
was
that.
yeah, my first arena show, and I've never been the same since.
Well, how about that? Well, if you, I can't get over that. Anyway, look, nice to talk to you, and it's a good coincidence, and bon chance, as the French say. Okay, safe travels. Right.